Hey there, friends. It's Bill McDonald, the Reading and Writing Doctor. Welcome to CREST Online Recorded Training, Part 2 Revising, Lesson 10. We're going to wrap up revising today and transition over to the constructed responses for Part 3, then the short answer questions for Part 4, and the extended essay questions for Part 5. I hope that you've been enjoying them so far, and I've tried to slow the pace down a little bit. Some of you emailed me saying that you hadn't had time to get deep into the lessons because of having to either get ready for school or because you were uh, already dealing with students and learning new things at your campuses. So uh, I'll try to keep the pace sort of like medium so that we can finish up the CREST online training and give you the foundation. But I do want to make sure you understand that the order that I presented the materials, the lessons, is probably the order, the structure, the way that you should scaffold your reading and writing throughout the year, that you build from that ground floor of editing, of spelling, the uh, priority being superhero keyboarding skills. Then you graduate from to the words with spelling, phrases with capitalization, sentences with punctuation, paragraphs with usage, run-ons and fragments for sentence boundaries. Then you transition to revising, where you're improving the content, which is what we're in right now. This is our last one, and we go from words to phrases to combining sentences to changing the order to adding a sentence uh, to support a sentence, adding a sentence inside a paragraph somewhere, um, then adding a sentence that creates the topic sentence or a main idea of an entire paragraph, or adding a sentence that is what you would call the central controlling idea, thesis, or position of an entire passage. The last one, today's lesson 10, is going to be on what do you add in terms of a sentence to either close the last paragraph or to close the entire passage. So if you can think of a human, I want you to think of the head as the introduction, the body as the body, and depending on how many body paragraphs there are, your monkeys are yellow, blue, green, red, orange, and purple. So if you divide it into what the S looks like, the monkey looks like an S, into sections, I would probably say divide each selection S into sections S that are sort of like a beginning up to 3 or 4 middles and an end. So one way to think of the ending is if your head is your introduction and your body paragraphs are the body, then your conclusion would be your socks being your transition to your shoes, which are your laces that tie everything together. Or you think of the introduction, body, and conclusion as a meal, and the introduction would be the appetizer. What is it that gets the passage selection going? What is the meat? What are the vegetables? And what is the dessert? So I'm going to do two revising questions that are very difficult for students because sometimes they want to bring closure just to the last paragraph. In other words, just close out the shoe with one lace, or they just want to give the dessert that goes with the dessert only, not tying together the whole passage. So the important thing to look at is, are they asking me to close one paragraph at the end, or are they asking me to close the entire passage? So what I would suggest you do is get a blank sheet of paper and draw, if you could, I'm going to show it to you first. When you're bringing closure, when you're adding a sentence, green means you're going to put something into that last paragraph that sort of ties everything together like the laces on the shoe. And you got to decide in the closure, are they asking me in the question to just close the paragraph, or are they asking me to close the entire passage? And so what I would recommend that you do is have your kids draw their own shoe. In other words, not their shoe, but a shoe that has a T on it, because the T can be, this is my topic, this is my title, this is the teaks that the question is asking about, this is me giving a topic sentence for the paragraph, or restating the thesis, or the, if I just put a little line here, the central idea or the controlling idea, or just restating the focus. And you got to ask yourself, am I just wanting to add a sentence to end the paragraph, or am I wanting to end the passage? Because we have to keep in mind that a passage does this like laces, it ties everything together. Ties as in the topic slash title, the idea, the big idea that everything is about. And because this was an expository informative passage, we're going to look at in the question, what are the examples that they explain? What were the specific supporting sentences? And then, of course, if you're going to add a lace at the end, what can you add that would sort of tie it all together? So when we look at the passage that we're going to practice the question on, the title was a video game control of a different type. Well, the topic was about controlling how much time that you spend playing video games. That's the big idea, because a lot of negative effects happen because you're playing video games either too much or too long. That's the big idea. And that's not a positive thing, that's a negative thing. And then the examples that they explained with specific supporting sentences were that they take up so much time, they take the place of important tasks, they cause distractions during meal times, there's a lack of exercise, you start eating unhealthy snacks while you're doing it, and because you're doing that, you end up gaining weight. So all those are negative examples that are explained with specific supporting sentences. So from beginning to end, the question asked what sentence could be added to close the entire uh, passage. So let me go ahead and share the question that I'm talking about here. That says Joan wants a better ending for her paper. And so if you look there, when it says ending, you have to understand what kind of ending, what kind of shoe do I want? Do I want to end the paragraph? No, I'm wanting to end the entire paper. So something that ties everything together, not just one piece. And so a lot of your students would choose an answer that would only close the paragraph or add something to whatever the last sentence was that was written. Which sentence can be added after sentence 20, which happens to be the last one, to bring the paper to a more effective closure? So F says, those are the reasons why we should spend less time playing video games. Now, restating and saying, that's my essay, that's always going to be a distractor. TA is never going to want your students to use a phrase that says, that's my story, I hope you like it. So it's real important that you understand that that phrase right there would always be a distractor, because there's something at the beginning of an essay called a preview statement, and that one at the end is called a review statement. Because that's formulaic and not an ideal way to start or end an essay of any type, or any paper, that would not be one that you would want to pick. But a lot of kids probably chose the one that was like that. As you can see, this came again from that most difficult revising test in history. Question number 4, I made one sort of like question 4. So when you get a chance, go take a look at the 2018 revising tests. So you can see that barely more than half of the kids got it correct. So let's see the second choice. All right. And what we'll do is we'll break it down into sections. There's nothing wrong with playing video games. Yes. The first part of the essay talked about all the positive benefits that result from playing video games. Positive, comma, but children should learn to have a healthy balance. What does that mean? Let's find out. Between how many hours they spend gaming each day, and there's my teeter-totter right there, and we're transitioning, the amount of time they set aside for important activities and people. So if you're closing the entire essay, it has a little piece of everything: how it starts, the benefits, and making sure that you don't spend so much time playing games that all those negative things happen that we read about on the laces. Some kids have gained several pounds from eating so much food while they are playing games. Well, since the last ones talked about that, uh, some kids are going to pick that because they're just adding a sentence to the last sentence. Since that would not close the paper, that would just add one sentence to the sentence that's closing the paper already. That wouldn't be a way to close the paper, a better ending. The ending ties everything together, not just one sentence or one paragraph. Parents should take away all technology from their children during the school week so that they can spend more time focusing on work. Now, here's a key word: take away all technology, since nowhere in there does the paper mention taking away technology. There's this keyword right here: all technology. That wasn't mentioned, that all technology wasn't part of the content, since they weren't mentioning all technology in this paper. Because of this content right here that has nothing to do with what this paper was about, that would not be a good choice, because it was just saying students should have less video game times during the school week so they can spend more time, and homework is only one detail. So since we have just one detail here, it was only one sentence, it was only one dum-dum or one smarty, it wasn't the entire package. When I say a smarty, I mean one little smarty in one package. Since that was only one smarty, it wasn't the entire package, we've got to pick one that has the entire package. So in this case, the best closure would be letter G, that has a little bit of the head, a little bit of the body, and a little bit of the laces that tie everything together. So the other way that I said was, if you think of, we can move from left to right. Think of when you go to a buffet, you have the appetizers, the meat, the vegetables, and the desserts, and then of course the drink. You can think of the drink as the blue water that you use to do your editing and revising, that you take your paper to the emergency room of editing and revising and tie everything together. So That method is using the train that's on your graphic organizer. So I want to briefly train you one way to use the train. Okay. The purpose was expository, informative, explaining that a lot of kids um, spend time playing video games on the fourth grade one, but this is from high school from this past year. And so I want you to notice that the title said, "What happened to the mammoths of Texas?" The title, T of ties, is supposed to help you understand the topic. And so when you break the passage down, the appetizer had what we might call let me look and make sure and see what they called it, a thesis. So that T, the thesis, that could also, like we said, be part of the thesis. Your thesis is your main idea, but the idea I should be about the topic, the mammoths. And so the thesis was in the introduction, mammoths could have been killed by a sudden catastrophe. That was the beginning thoughts of scientists and researchers. And then it transitioned over time to now there's discoveries that help researchers determine that the mammoths died more slowly. And so basically, there's a before and after uh, thought about whatever happened with the dinosaurs. So then they spend the middle uh, giving you some meat and vegetables. And what they said was, what sentence could be added at the end after sentence 27, as you can see here, that would restate the thesis. And I don't like the word restate because restating emphasizes repeating. And you'll notice that very few words are repeated from the thesis. So I'm glad that even though they use the word restate, um, that what I would hope that you would want to teach your kids is that which sentence does the best of uh, rephrasing or emphasizing the thesis in terms of a reflection. How is life different or better or worse because of whatever I've read? How uh, do I leave this passage thinking differently? And so, sentence 25 said there's still disagreements about why mammoths died, and people visit to make their own theories. Okay, that is about the topic. Sentence 26. In the 1990s, sorry for my missing zero there, a shelter was erected over the site and they named it Woolly Mammoth National Monument. The last one, the research is still ongoing, research about whatever happened to the mammoths, and visitors can come and see the excavated bones and the soil tests being done. And they said, okay, let's restate a thesis, which means if you remember on the front where the graphic organizer is, the thesis is sort of like the big idea of the whole thing. And in the elementary grades, they would call it a central idea. In middle school, they'd call it a controlling idea. And in high school, in red here, you can see the word thesis. What is something that mentions a little bit about the appetizer, the meat, and the vegetables, the thumb, the fingers, and the pinky, the head, the body, and the shoes. So as we look at the different choices, it says, zoom in a little bit because this we did this one a little bit small. Uh, Zendeas would like to add a concluding sentence to her essay that restates her thesis. Which sentence should she add at the end of the essay? So after that last sentence, after sentence number 28, I believe it was, let me just make sure, sentence, sorry, after sentence 27. How do I bring all that together? So keeping in mind the topic, the title was what happened to the woolly mammoths, and the two different theories that were mentioned about them. Let's see how they close. The mystery of what happened to the woolly mammoths at Weka remains a total mystery to the researchers and everyone else. Since there's repetition there of mystery and mystery, whenever you're doing the process of elimination, anytime that you find repetition, you might put a little red flag and say, I don't think that would be the best answer. I might choose something different. A complete skeleton of a woolly mammoth was recently discovered by a farmer in one of his fields in Michigan. Okay, that's a great detail. That's a great smarty, singular, but that wouldn't be a great thesis that would tie everything together, which was the big picture being whatever happened to the woolly mammoths according to the title, and the two theories inside the introduction in what we call the appetizer or the engine of the train that we can put in the caboose. Though there is no conclusive evidence, with continued research, scientists hope that one day they will know the specific cause of why the mammoths perished. Okay, so the 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 title said, "What happened to the mammoths of Texas?" Okay, it said they were killed, they died, and so what I want you to notice is instead of saying killed or died or what happened, what they were saying, let's go ahead and give them a thesis that says in different words. The idea is that we want to be able to figure out the specific cause, the reason why mammoths perished. And perished is higher vocabulary for died or what could have happened to them. So as you can see here, they didn't restate, they rephrased what they were trying to get across in the title, which helped us understand the topic, and the thesis, which was written in the appetizer, the introduction, the engine, or what we might call the head. So that's the best answer so far. So between the two that I've chosen, I'm going to get rid of letter A because of the repetition. Let's look at D. Waco has many other interesting places to visit, such as the campus at Baylor University. All right, there's places to visit. Well, because other places to visit have nothing to do with the content, the title, and the thesis, because Baylor University has nothing to do with our content, our title, or our thesis, because Magnolia Market has nothing to do with the content, title, or thesis, and the Cameron Park Zoo has nothing to do with that, because none of this content ties in as a dessert with our topic, title, top topic, title, thesis, then the best answer is going to be letter C, that does a good job of rephrasing, saying our thesis in a different way. So when you write any expository piece and they ask you for closure, this is an example of rephrasing or reflecting with your thesis, not restating or repeating, regurgitating the exact words. So, uh, as I mentioned, the reason I put the question mark there, I don't like that phrase restating because a lot of people think it means repeating the same words, and that's not exactly what they mean at all. So, the good thing was that only about 25% of the kids missed this one. So probably the distractors were maybe one detail or the repetition. So that's the closure, the conclusion of our part 2 revising. Our next video will be an introduction. What I want to do in the next video is share with you part 3, what is the basic order of how we're going to do part 3, because the constructed responses go from very simple responses that are constructed and open-ended, that you grab something, or sometimes you might, because the program will just ask you to use some words that are already in the passage or in the problem or in the question, or depending on if we're talking about science or math, uh, social studies, or reading, because all of those are going to be getting constructed responses. If you have a teacher friend who teaches something besides reading, you might encourage them to sign up for part 3, the constructed responses, because I'm going to try and tie in all subjects using the constructed responses. Now, I know that we're still in the middle of revising, but I just want to show you using something that you already have. If you received the materials already, there's a few of that just ordered this week, so you'll be getting your materials shortly. So there is, we finished part 1 editing and part 2 revising, taking your passage and your essay to the emergency room of editing and revising. So part 3 is going to be going through all of these constructed type responses in reading, math, social studies, and science. And I'll try to, as I did with the editing and revising, take them from the simplest to the most rigorous, the most difficult ones to do, based on the quantity of work that's involved. For example, if you look at number 6, if there's more than one correct answer, that means there could be 2 answers or 3 answers. If you select from a drop-down menu, sometimes there's 2, 3, 4 responses, and so your kids are going to have to get all 3 or 4. If there's 5 responses, they're going to have to select all 5. Anytime that there's more than one, then your constructed points have a value of 2 if they get all the answers right. If there's if they get partial credit, if they get some of them correct, then in most cases they'll get at least 1 point. But I was told by the director of reading or from TEA that they haven't decided exactly how much of a partial response is enough to get partial credit, which bothers me, because I wish that if even one or more of multiple responses were there, they should at least be able to get 1 point, and then they get 2 points. That would be the simplest way to do the scoring, but they said they haven't decided yet, but they would let us know once they release the final drafts of what's called the rubrics for constructed, short answer, and um, extended essay response, and the scoring guides. The bigger information, the more extensive information is going to be the detailed examples of how to get a 1 or 2 when it comes to the short answer responses, and how to get a 1, a 0 to a 5 from 2 different readers on the extended essay response. So as you look here on this left-hand side, this is part 3 for reading teachers. This is part 4. There'll also be some short answer questions in social studies and science. So it's important that even if you don't have your friends sign up for that one, that you show them how to do that, because they're anybody that teaches and tests social studies and science in fifth and or eighth grade, they will be required to understand how to do uh, short answer. And then all of you reading teachers are going to get one extended essay question responding to uh, a passage, one specific question that will require you to go from a 1 red light to a 2 yellow light to a 3 green light to a 4 or a 5, with good editing and revising of the content and the conventions. So please share with your other reading friends, math, social studies, and science, because for parts 3 and 4, those are going to be in all subjects. Just so you can see the difference, if you're a reading teacher, the constructed responses are going to be limited to numbers 1 through 7. If you teach math, social studies, or science, you'll also have to be aware that they can give you uh, these type of constructive responses uh, that can be chosen. And so just be aware of that. And I do want to remind you once again that regular multiple choice that's online is always going to be A, B, C, D. And so far we've been instructed that that's going to be about 75% of the questions. So all of these new types will be the open-ended of different types, where they have to do one of the constructed responses for 1 or 2 points, the short answer for 2 points. And in case you didn't see my post, 2 different people are going to read the response. Your kids are going to get 2 questions that are worth 2 points each on the short answer. And if the first grader gives the paper a 2 and the second person gives the paper a 2, then the student does get a 2. They don't add those up for short answer. If the first grader gives it a 1 and the other one gives it a 1, it will get a 1. If for some reason both graders feel like the question was not answered and evidence was not given, then the paper would get 0 points. What happens if one gets a 0 and the other one gives it a 1, those are not the same on short answer. So that would be graded by the manager of that group, and the student would get whatever the manager determined, either a 0, a 1, or a 2. In the same way, if one grader gives the paper, the short answer, a 1, and the second person gives it a 2, those numbers are not the same in short answer. So those 2 scores would be thrown away, and the director will either give it a 2, a 1, or a 0 for that response. And again, short answers won't be doubled. That will just be 2 points, 1 point, or 0 points. The extended essays will be graded by 2 people. So if one of them gives your kids a 5, and the other one gives him a 5 because he did all of the things that are required in the rubric, then your students would get a 10 for that. From my understanding, as long as the scores are adjacent, in other words, a 5 and a 4, that would be 9. A 4 and a 3, that would be a 7. A 3 and a 2, that would be a 5. A 2 and a 1, that would be a 3. A 0 and a 0 would be unscorable or indecipherable response, which would give your kids zeros. And please be clear, there are going to be some zeros in both the constructed, but in the short answer and an extended essay, there's going to be probably thousands, if not tens of thousands, and perhaps 100,000 kids could get zeros or ones because of not doing even the first step of the rubric or barely answering the question, red light to get a 1, or giving the central controlling idea or thesis to get a 1 on the extended. But if they don't do anything else, don't expect your kids to get more than a 1. Plus 1 on the extended would be 2, and a 1 from each answer. If that's all they do is answer the question, they would get 1 point. But if they don't give the evidence, either with or without quotation marks, they won't earn that second point. So that's just basically a brief summary, because as we transition, the biggest changes are going to be in this section. So please be aware that I'm going to take this part slowly to make sure that we are able to cover with great adequacy. And I want to make sure that you get both quality and quantity of content when we go over these. Be sure to email me or message me at any time if you have any questions along the way, and I'll be sure to answer those questions. Again, once again, we're getting ready to start part 3, 4, and 5 over the next couple of weeks. I was going to try and wrap up by the end of August, but so that I can make sure I give you quality. If you're watching this at some other point in the year, this was done during the summer of 2022 as a 5-part series presented in order, paced and scaffolded from simplest to most rigorous in terms of the types of questions. So uh, if you're watching this right now and you have some math, reading, science, or social studies, algebra teacher friends, go ahead and encourage them to sign up for part 3, the constructed, and make sure that when they check out of this door of the CREST online training, that they, in the notes section, type the words part 3. If you're signing up for 3 and 4, in the notes, just put you'll put a quantity of 2 when you're registering, and in the note just write parts 3 and 4. If you're a reading teacher and you feel like you have the editing, revising, and you kind of got the idea of how the constructed responses are going to work because of the way that they modeled them on the TEA website, uh, then you might just want to sign up for parts 4 and 5. So again, you'd enter a quantity of 2, but make sure you let me know in the notes that you want parts 4, the short answer responses, and part 5, the extended essay responses, to make sure that you get the right lessons. By the time we're done, we're going to have almost 100 hours of modeling and guidance, and this is probably the most in-depth, in detail I've ever been in terms of one of my online trainings or even in-person trainings, because in person it's limited to 6 hours, and those cost $2,000 a day for just 1 or 2 days, and a little bit less for 3 days or more. But never in my 20 years of consulting have I gone into such detail to help teachers who need a step by step. How do I start? What do I do next? What order should I teach in? So feel free to email me at the email address above if you have any questions about the CREST online trainings or my materials. My website is there as well. Um, if you want to message me about the link to CREST, or uh, email me about an in-person training, feel free. I'd be happy to send you any my flyer and my questionnaire. There's been a lot of schools asking for guidance because it's no longer fourth, seventh, ninth, and 10th doing writing. It's no longer about me, just the fourth, seventh, ninth, or 10th grade writing teacher. It's about we, the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th grade reading and writing teachers. And because of constructed and short answer, it's we, as in all of us, the math teachers and social studies and science, are all going to get constructed, and the reading social studies and science teachers are going to get short answer, and just the reading teachers will get the extended essay questions. So I hope that explains. Thank you for tuning in to the first two parts of our training, and for your patience as I explained how parts 3, 4, and 5 were going to work. God bless you guys. I hope you're having a great first week or weeks, depending on how many weeks you've been with your students. This is a Thursday for me, so we will do our introduction to part 3 tomorrow, being a Friday. Uh, so feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Don't forget, many of the lessons had challenges, things for you to do to practice an extension of the lesson. And I did those so that you could possibly have your students do those challenges as well, as part of applying and implementing whatever strategy or technique that we were learning that day. So take care, God bless, and you guys are all in my prayers.